we always talk to you about goalies. In your opinion, do you stick with Reimer or do you go back to Bernier?
I'm from old school. I think Billy is the same way. The best thing to do with your goalie is play the goalie who's hot.
Mm-hmm.
So if Reimer's hot, you play Reimer. If Reimer's not, right? If Reimer's not hot, then you're going to go back to Bernier. But if Reimer's playing well, the worst thing you could do to a goalie while he's playing well is to take him out. That's the worst thing you can do, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and I think, Frank, to extend that, it's the same idea. As a coach, when you're not sure what you got, you play till you lose. Then you've got a natural step to put the other guy in the lineup, and if he only plays one game and loses, then Reimer goes back in. If Reimer runs it for 5 games.
Because right now, they're going to be playing Detroit back-to-back, and there's talk that they are going to be playing one guy one night, one guy the other night, but there's talk now that Bernier may actually be the first, he'll play in the first of the back-to-backs, which would be somewhat shocking, startling, because right now James Reimer is playing well. You can't fault the guy.
I'm a big fan of James Reimer. And James Reimer suffers from the same affliction as every single fucking goalie in the world. It's called, when you lose your confidence, you don't know where you put it. You don't know where it's hidden. And when you lose your confidence, you're done like dinner. The net becomes massive, your equipment becomes small and uncomfortable, and you are not sure, you're second-guessing yourself. And Reimer lost his confidence. I believe Reimer was on the path to superstardom, to being one of the best goalies in the NHL, and then he had that concussion. He was concussed, and nobody admitted it. They shouldn't have played him in some of the games, and he was totally bewildered of how to play the game. And now he looks like the Reimer who came to Toronto and was going to be the big savior between the pipes. And I'm a big fan of his. And a team who rallies around the goalie rallies around the team.
But Bernier's your number one guy. I mean, if they're both going to play one game in this home with Detroit anyway, does it really matter who goes for game A and game B if they're both going to see 60 minutes out of the 120?
That's a fair question, but I would. I don't care who the number one goalie is. The number one goalie is the goalie who's winning in between the pipes, and Arthur Zerbe in Carolina, he did a great job for them. Then they decided to go with a young guy, Cam Ward, and he won him a Stanley Cup. So, I mean, sometimes the intuition of a coach is the proper intuition, and sometimes he looks like a soccer goalie. The ball went in, and he went the other way. What do you think, Billy?
Well, I think that if Carlisle makes the arbitrary decision to start Bernier and Bernier loses, then Carlisle is going to say, why the hell did I do that? But if Bernier wins, then he puts Reimer back in, and he's at home, and all of a sudden Reimer wins. He's a genius. But in order to avoid any embarrassment, I think you should go with the goalie that won the last game.
That's what I'm
in total agreement, 100%.
And that's why we'll see in this game whether they've changed it, because that was the talk on the street, and based on what people saw in practice when Bernier left the ice, that he may be the guy. So
it'll be interesting, because what Carlisle is clearly doing is he's putting his own reputation on the line. He doesn't have to. I would think 70% of the people that are in the Leafs nation would say, hey, he had no choice. He had to go with the winner.
Mm-hmm.
And if he chooses to go with Bernier, well, then he's outthinking himself. I think the easy way through it is to go again with Reimer, and then at the end of that say, okay, I got to get Bernier back in. I'm playing him tomorrow night.
Yeah.
But I can tell you this: if I'm the coach and Reimer wins in Detroit, he's back in the net Saturday night.
You know, there's a question I want to ask both to Frank and to Bill. On the second goal, which was a rocket of a shot, Reimer ducked. It almost looked like he thought it was going over the net. So, Frank, and you could tell me, did it look to you like the puck's going over his shoulder because he thought the puck was going like past him and he wasn't?
You know what? Like I didn't see the play that you're talking about. And by the way, Carlin, good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you too, Frank. How you doing?
Good, my buddy. I did not see the play, but it's very hard to predict what a goalie felt or what he saw. maybe he didn't duck. It was just a reaction. It's reflex is 90% of a goalie's talent, and sometimes it's just actual reflex that makes you stop the puck. It's the way you react, and it's the way that now you've learned how to play the game, and it's like a golfer, eye-hand coordination. It's reflex. So maybe it was just a reflex to drop his shoulder. I know Reimer, his biggest liability, and that's what's in the NHL, and that's what all the shooters know, is he's very weak in the glove.
Yeah.
Now, if I was a shooter, I would not be shooting for a goalie's glove, no matter how weak it is. I would always shoot for his blocker side, because they tend, first of all, you got a blocker and you're holding the stick, and it's not where your speed is. Your speed is in your trapper, and that's where a lot of great goalies practice. Eddie Belfour, Tony Esposito, they throw tennis balls against the wall with baseball mitts, and just to get that eye-hand coordination, that ability to just do it without thinking about it. So it's very normal for a goalie to drop his shoulder, because his reflexes, if he thinks the puck is going low, he's going to try to cover the bottom of the ice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't see the play, so I really don't know what he was thinking. And the only guy who can answer that question is himself. I'd say the best reflex goalie I ever saw in my entire life, and I was not a big fan of his style of play, but he was probably one of the best goalies that ever played, was Dominic Hasek.
Yeah, because he was flipping and flopping all over the ice. Yeah.
And his head was like a fucking head of a turtle. His head kept going, and he kept his eye on the puck. And I think that the biggest problem with the goalies today is they do not keep their eye on the puck. They just drop. As soon as they think the guy's going to shoot, they drop, because the old adage is, if you lie across the net, you take the bottom of the net, you got 50% chance of stopping a puck. So I really, 90% of the goalies today, they drop at every shot. Very little do they stop, stand up. And in the 70s, in the early 80s, most goalies, or even in the 60s, were all stand-up goalies. Johnny Bauer looked like a stop sign, and it was very effective for him. Jacques Plante played his angles. Very rarely did Jacques Plante drop to his knees.
I thought, and Frank, another